Greetings and a warm welcome back to another exciting installment of the Habbage Hardcore Minecraft series. In today's session, we're going to continue kind of where we left off at the end of the last. We've got a fresh tree farm scattered around some of our area. We'll let that finish up and chop it all back down. We'll keep working on our cows, and especially maybe get our farm to a point where it's fully equipped and ready to go. But rather than talking about it, let's jump back into the content. And here we go. So we're going to jump right back on into our Susanna Dean world and get after it. So as we'd wrapped up in our last session, we literally had just made our new friend here. I don't think we have a name tag yet. I could be wrong, but we can't give him a name yet. But boy, when we get one, you're going to be candidate number one, buddy. You've earned it. Look at you. You got your chest there, looking good with the saddle. Good stuff, man. So very excited. We've got our donkey, and while we'll probably break up this session into a few pieces. The first video, definitely in the moment, and I won't rule out the possibility of some longer play sessions, but we definitely want to keep those fairly manageable. While I don't particularly mind, even if content creators have long videos. Usually, if I'm watching something as far as created content, I'm going to pull that up and have it running in the background while I'm doing other stuff. I'm not usually just sitting on my couch staring at the screen while that happens. So that has its pluses and minuses. You may be prone. Wow, we got a little aggressive there with our area trees, so we may have to work around them for a bit. But it's our field. This is going to be our last irrigation ditch. Sorry, tree, that had such a short opportunity. Okay, so 2, 3 field. That's the ditch. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then 2 for the boundary of the whole area. So maybe we can work just underneath that one. And I really do want to kind of knock out the earth moving part of this operation here. As we talked about and have and will, we have the benefit that while we're out here working on these, the wheat and potatoes and carrots and pumpkins that we've already planted, they're getting going for us while we work just over to our side on the right over there. And you can see some of that wheat is already beginning to ripen up. Very nice for us. And of course, as fully expected, I don't know whether I bothered to grab my bed when I came out here. Fortunately, we're not too far from home, even though we are without it. We've got enough time to at least get a few more swipes through here. So we'll definitely have to return to the house this evening and get a unroofed sleep indoors. We started yesterday for me, the previous episode, talking about trying to improve the house a little bit, and it's obviously it's pretty ugly at the moment and purely functional. But I do think if we can get this farm up and going, then I'd like to stretch my legs a little bit, get out there. Real life is, you know, all about movement. You know, as much as folks that enjoy video games may enjoy playing at extended durations, it's so important for our body health and for our mental health to be up and dynamic in our world. I like to start each day, pretty much regardless of the weather, getting up and going outside for a walk. And it's a sleep sacrifice sometimes. Sometimes you just want to burrow deeper under the blankets in the middle of the winter and not do it. But I find I'm more ready to face whatever's coming at me in that day for having gotten up, gotten out in the weather, whatever it may be, and just taking some time, get the blood flowing. You know, as the folks that do some calisthenics and that kind of exercise stuff often say, it's all about getting the heart pumping, all that kind of stuff. Well, yeah, it's absolutely right. It's also about resetting your own kind of mental state as you start the day. Maybe you hear some birds singing, or you see a nice sunrise, depending on the season and the time of day. You get that fresh air feeling even before you've had a first cup of coffee, and your muscles, your legs in particular, but your arms and everything are set to handle whatever comes at them in the day, having gotten their own chance to wake up. I don't make that particular effort overly, I don't want to say aggressive, but demanding, taxing. I'm just purely moving, taking a little bit of mental time. What's coming up in that day, whatever it may be. A chance to kind of go from whatever you've been doing the night before, sleeping, and make sure you're awake and alert, ready to go for the rest of the day. So that's what I'd like to do in this world too, is get out and about and stretch my legs. And for those of you who were ripping out your eyeballs looking at this chest as we were in and out of it a million times yesterday, guess what's in there that I just absolutely no attempt to make make anybody else suffer, but absolutely blind as we were looking at melon slices on hand, ready to go. That we'd swung through a couple of villages. We hit one desert temple very early on in this world, and then as we were making our way to what this would eventually become our home base, we also went through a savanna village, and it was there, I believe, that we got some slices of melon. So we'll get those planted as well. But I think before we just quickly move to rectify that mistake, we're going to try to get the rest of our grid laid out on the fields themselves. We're close. We can run that hoe up and down and get those going. But we're, now that I say it, why wouldn't we have them growing since we are so close and already have that water out? Let's just do it and be done with it. So since we're here and we've got free time, none of these spiders can seemingly get to us too much, and we'll go to sleep at the end. But before we get back out there with our pumpkins, when you put in a single pumpkin piece like this, it's the whole pumpkin, and you'll get 4 seeds every time out of it. With these guys, you're always just going to get a single seed, and it's when you break the melon itself that you'll get a range of slices, and I think that's 3 to 7 per melon, maybe. Don't quote me on that. Obviously, I can't even see the contents of my own chest reliably, so we'll kind of pretend like that was our plan all along, and we were just busy getting going with our pumpkins, and so excited about those that we. Um, Now, this is one advantage of having that ladder. We can kind of come out and greet the morning visitors in whichever direction we want. We've got a creeper here, and he shouldn't be too terrible to deal with, but one thing I like to do as I'm dealing with them is kind of swing around as I'm attracting their notice and make sure I'm taking them head on. If you get a diagonal, they can shift at the last block or so, and that can become, you don't want to find that you missed them. Is the main risk. They're on level ground like that. They're pretty easy to deal with. They don't offer a ton of danger as long as you see them coming. First world aside, if you don't see them, they can get right up on you, and boom, you're done, just like we were. So always want to be on the lookout, and that's why I'm kind of going around this ridge. We built our own little gully where they can hide with all the trees. Even skeletons won't necessarily just get cleared up by daylight or sunrise. So I think we're looking pretty safe. We'll just take this down from the heights anyway. We made a start here on our laying the cobblestone at that far edge. And I don't think this is going to be too much, but I guess there's some more pillagers out there. Again, it's the disadvantage of early morning. You are still a little all over the place, and I have not yet started the morning ritual of coffee, which for me is just a wonderful highlight of the day and borderline essential. But I decided to jump in here without even bothering. Well, as I said, I hope to break these up, not keep them from getting too terribly long today. And in the process of doing that, we'll at some point step away to make myself a nice, probably a couple cups of coffee, just to have one ready and waiting when I get through the other. And we'll have those to sip on. Okay, now we've rectified the situation. We've got melons growing. As I said, I'm not going to really bother harvesting those until we're pretty close to fully done. We'd rushed a little bit on our original field to turn it over and get more wheat, but since we have it fully planted, there's not as much rush. With the pumpkins, on the other hand, there is. And this is what I talked about with the vine crops falling in either direction. We had planted everything we had, and this last one, when it was growing up and ready to make a pumpkin, it looked in either direction and said, okay, I can't put a pumpkin here. It's stone. It has to be a dirt block. I can't put one here. There's already a vine growing. So it had two choices, and 50-50 chance it plopped it into the fertilized soil, and that one, no problem. We got a pumpkin out of the deal. There's nothing wrong with that. But it did take the fertilization back off of that. So we'll just flip that back over, and as we talked about with the melons, as you can see, you put a pumpkin down instead of the range of slices and turning those into seeds in an extra step. You just get 4 per. So, boom, we've got another good stock of pumpkins. These are going to end the possibility of another, and I hear our friends in the background there. They're kind of talking to us, and I think we'd like to deal with them before we go. Now, we've talked about shields a little bit. I don't carry them all the time. They are cumbersome. They block your view a little bit, and they don't really do too much for us. But all of this band of guys are equipped with crossbows. If he just despawned, because it's twice now. We've been... I wasn't scared. I just wanted to get ready to play. Come back. There's the Enderman. He's still around. A turtle cow. Did you see a bunch of unsavory characters wandering around? They were grunting, threatening a little bit. No? That is a shame. Alright, well, take the shield off again. That'll probably bring them back. But so there we have it. We've got melons going along with our pumpkins. We have most of a row, and even, once they start going, as you can see, even in the course of just harvesting what's there, we get a whole nother little batch already growing, I guess, or, maturing. So that's good. We're going to want to get the fence up because, we talked about wandering traders and things damaging our fields. They've improved the water a little bit. You can get lucky on it like that and pop up. But I don't want animals trying to hop out of this water and ending up trampling our nice fresh dirt. So again, press on. We'll try to get it ringed and fenced as a minimum here. And by the time we're ready for that, we should have the carrots and potatoes that we planted fully ready to go and can split them up into each of their own fields so that they have their own homes to grow up in. And by overlooking the melons, I made it a little more difficult on us. The last remaining crop that'll go in this area will be beets when we find some seeds to use, and those will either come out of a wandering trader if we are so lucky to see one of them, or if we get to a village where they have some planted in the field and growing, we'll just switch them out, maybe help them increase their stores of wheat by replacing their growing beets with some additional wheat seeds that we can get right around. So we won't outright take it away. We want them to continue to prosper in their own farming endeavors. After all, it's villages that supply us with our start, and we'd like to return the favor. Not ungrateful, so we'll keep working in that direction. Alright, we've killed a shovel, but in the meantime, we've gotten past our irrigation ditch, which means wind down and back here, and we'll be good to clean up, frame, and plant. And yes, Kyle, we can maybe lead you over to your friends. I know you're probably jealous. They're living the good life, or in a nice, secure, well-maintained bovine residents, and you guys are left out here homeless, wandering and afraid. Some people may call that a good life, a natural, unrestricted or unfettered life, but I think you're going to be happier just knowing where you belong with your friends, and more importantly, you won't be in the middle of my fields. I'm getting close now. You can tell the dirt digging is taking its toll. We're talking to cows. The cows appreciate being talked to. The romanticized, often not completely accurate view of the early American Southwest when cowboys rode the plains and drove these massive herds of cattle up from Texas and New Mexico and out across to wherever the rail junctions were. And of course Kansas City became a big center for that. Eventually a lot of the early American beef was being delivered to Chicago, the feedlots and meat processing, and there it would be, it moved as a living cow to get there, but then would be converted into food, and the technology of the day prepared to be transported back to families all around the country. So that was great, but the reason I kind of got off on this tangent is as those cowboys were taking the cows out across the American prairie, they didn't have paddocks or yards prepared and bounded with fences, things like that at best. And I don't know that I don't know whether they did or didn't use a whole lot of rope corrals. You can, basically loop rope around a bunch of cows out in the field and keep them all contained in and amongst themselves for a night. But that would have required carrying, lengths and lengths and lengths of rope, and they were moving light. The old image of a chuck wagon being used just to carry a person who would cook their food and the food supplies. They certainly wouldn't, I think, be opposed to taking food where they could find it along the way. But you got to remember that they're doing a job. They're, at the time, those guys aren't out here going, "Oh, I want to live the life of a cowboy." There wasn't much. It was a relatively short period of time in American history that work even existed. And while it did, they basically were totally focused on getting the job done. And a big part of that job was making sure that the cows in their care not only arrived safe, and they couldn't lose any cows, and that's where the whole cattle drive, they had to kind of push the cows from behind with their horses, and they would just have enough people to make a semicircle behind them, and maybe have a guy out in front that was watching out for rivers and that kind of stuff. Again, I'm not a cowboy. I haven't lived in that, but from what I've done in the way of reading and learning about it, one of the big concerns as they were trying to make sure that happened and the cows got there was that they didn't want to move overly quickly. The faster you walk cows towards their final destination, the more they're going to use up the weight that they've gained out in the pastures, wherever they grew up. And that would have been southwestern, throughout Texas, the areas of New Mexico, southern Colorado, and Oklahoma. Basically they're just from wherever those cows lived their lives, they're going to move them in the direction of the railheads. And if you spent a year, I think most cattle were yearlings at that point. You don't want to keep them as pets overly long if you're preparing them for market. But they spent a season, if not more. I'm not sure how long it takes them to be at their most efficient, but when they were ready to go, those cows would have spent a full growing season out eating the grasses of the plains and getting effectively fat and happy, ready to go. And they wouldn't be, they'd be left to their own devices. That was the idea of branding, that they could wander, and before you did it, you'd have a roundup. You would go out into, kind of cover the plains and locate your cows by their brands and bring them together at a common point, and then push the entire group out to those railheads. So you want to move slowly and easily. It's a nice gradual walk, as we talked about. I like to start my mornings just kind of cruising along. You think about things like cattle drives or things like that while you're going. Not that I'd really intended to. It was just running into those cows that I talked about it. But the cows, as they were on the drive, again, another word that even the most casual of people probably heard associated with cowboys and all that. There's the roundup to get all the cows ready to go, and the cattle drive or cattle train to move them out to the railroads. And of course, there was the dread of a stampede, and that's where the cows that you don't have leashes or anything on a cow, that you're just moving them in a direction. You don't have pens to put them in at night. You're driving them across what at the time were unpopulated plains. They were wide open, and no one was really using that land other than the railroads had been granted a lot of it to create towns to help them make money off the Transcontinental Railroad projects and others. Big history, lots of pieces there, but for the most part, even the settlers that were out in places like Kansas and Nebraska and Oklahoma later, it had its legacy as the Sooner State and folks going in for the late land grab. But even the pioneers of the plains were relatively few and far between. If you're familiar with the climate and the area, of course, it's very good for agriculture. Now we irrigate that soil by pulling water from deep under the earth and pumping it up to water the fields that are there. Well, even as late as the example of the 1930s Dust Bowl era, there wasn't enough infrastructure there to keep enough water on the soil to go. But at the time, back in the days of the cowboys, and we're talking the latter half of the 19th century, those guys just had to keep the cattle together as best they could out in a wide open area without any. They didn't even have many, unless you were right at a river or something. There weren't even trees to effectively push them up against you. Just out in what was described as an endless sea of grass, and night comes down and you want to make sure that these cows don't stampede, again, run off. And it was at night where predators could threaten those cows. Whether it was and again, I don't know how much has changed out there. If you really had wolves on the plains too much, you certainly had coyotes and things like that. There was at the time the legacy of the conflict between the native peoples of the Americas and these cowboys that were moving across what was not really even thought of as anyone's land in their culture. It was just the land, and no one had a right to use it. So they would certainly exhibit their own beliefs for conflict. Culturally, if they encountered other tribes, they were familiar with what led to conflict and what avoided it, how you would react amongst friends or not friends. So they would kind of exhibit that on the expanding European-based settlers. And so nighttime on the plains was a little more reminiscent of what we had here in Minecraft. You didn't know what was going to come in the middle of the night, and this is the romanticized or Hollywoodized version of cowboys. There's so much land out there and so much wide open space that, particularly as the cattle drives were beginning, and this new economic means of delivering lots of meat to a much larger public, that the spaces were full. They would go all the way from, let's call it South Texas. We're not really angling over towards the Gulf too much, but more El Paso and north. Once you get out of the hills and are out into that scrubby kind of low grassland area, that's where cows, were doing well naturally, and where early ranchers found that they had done very well raising cattle and had far more than the local markets could want. But how are they gonna? If you can't sell them in your own backyard, how are you gonna make money on it? And this process of driving cattle across the plains to their new homes was begun. So as you're moving north and east, generally into what later became established trails, they rarely encountered others on their trip. But when they did, or more likely when they encountered animals or weather, those were prone to startling the cattle lots of times in the middle of the night, but it mostly because the majority of your labor force, the cowboys that are running this cattle drive, are sleeping at that time. They may not have slept deeply and particularly restfully. They've got a blanket and a saddle to kind of throw down on the ground and do the best they can. But they don't have tents. They don't have much more than we have here in Minecraft when we throw down our bed and wait for morning to come. So yeah, they were camping kind of in the extreme. Is this why this isn't lining up? We made a full botch. Okay, these two, right? No, these two. That's what you get from talking to cows. How that's working out, I'm not entirely certain. Oh, this is why, because that is wrong. I just didn't fix the problem. Okay. So there. No. Still wrong. How is this still wrong? I need that coffee. It's already becoming painfully aware. So cows, as these nights in unfamiliar country wore on, and maybe you have a thunderstorm rumbling overhead, kind of that rumble of thunder out in the distance. You've got unexpected flashes of lightning that just crop up, and then you have the big, terrible crash that follows. Well, to try to keep the cattle as comfortable and unspooked as possible, the cowboys, that was where the idea of cowboy lullabies and the musician glorified cowboy songs of country music. What on earth did I do here? How? And how did that finish? Huh, just an extra torch almost not cleared. Okay. Well, somehow we manage. We're gonna get through this. So, yeah, cowboys would talk and softly sing. In some cases, I'm sure it wasn't as often as was laid out in the movies and by later musicians who kind of said, "Oh yeah, I grew this out." Yeah, folks who were inclined to singing, and again in an era when there wasn't a lot of radio or mass media stuff, folk songs, and even if you weren't aspiring to be a professional musician, these were the same guys that may have worked around the ranches in very isolated small towns in the cattle growing area or raising area. So your entertainment of evenings, even when you weren't out on the plains, would have been, singing, popular songs that you'd heard and heard enough to get to know. You would share those traditionals or what folk type music that we now have, and they would become known favorites. So you would get to know those same tunes and sing along the words, popular melodies that just you'd come to know, whether they arose from hymns or more known songs you would adapt lyrics to because you had plenty of time to do this. That's one luxury that you've got when you're tending to cattle, and slowly, as to not make them lose all the meat that they'd grown over the years. You don't want them to race across and do that, so you're moving across vast distances at a very leisurely pace. Yeah, you can modify the words to ones that reflect your life and times. Obviously, there's no copyright or anything like that. You're just taking a tune that everybody would be familiar with and throwing some different lyrics on it that kind of match up with your circumstances, and maybe you'd pick away at that as you're walking or riding, and the landscape would be inspirational. The work, the last time the cows ran and you were forced to chase them down, I think that would end up being pretty memorable, right? You've got a bunch of cows that have been walking slowly for a few days, and suddenly they're going full tilt, and you're riding as fast as you can to try to keep up, that would inspire probably some lyrics, I think. And your buddies would laugh about it. If you've got the duty of a night shift, you you got to find some way to stay awake, to be on the lookout for whether it's a group of coyotes or something that may wander into to threaten the herd. And that's long, lonely, probably pleasantly cool for the time of year that you're moving these cattle, but perhaps a little bit chilly, just relatively, maybe raining. So you got a lot of time on your hands to try to stay awake and keep focused on the job at hand. And as you're doing that, that's where your mind probably kicks up. But again, you've got an audience of cattle, and a part of what you're doing is keeping them assured through the night that you're there. They, while the kind of dumb look of a cow is used disparagingly to describe humans, that may not may give off an appearance of not being overly interested or that kind of thing. What cattle aren't dumb either. They're going to recognize that a person is there, and that person has largely stepped into a role that they can be depended on to, they're the ones that are in charge of moving these cattle along. And so hearing that voice through the night would keep them soothed. And when, if you were the tone deaf cowboy, or you didn't particularly enjoy singing, although I think for that age it was almost unprecedented to not be used to doing a little more singing. Nowadays we go, oh, I can't sing, and just kind of laugh it off if we start to do that. You go, oh, compared to everybody I hear, there's better voices out there, and compared to them, I can't do it. I don't even want to listen to myself do it. But when you didn't have a mass media, you didn't have a radio or recordings of people singing, the only other people you commonly hear, maybe if you go into a church and sing a bunch of hymns, you've got the congregation of a number of voices, and outside of that, it's just others around you. And that's why people that could sing well were particularly prized, but that didn't make them exclusive. And so I think, more often you would find that people, regardless of talent, maybe would belt out some songs, and they wouldn't be belting them out per se. They wouldn't be singing loudly. They would just be, kind of gently keeping their voice present, allowing the cows to know they were there and everything was okay throughout. So yeah, they would do that. I have read that others of that era, the ones that had maybe had more education, and I think that there's a lot of popular culture, more so in maybe the American 50s and 60s, mid 20th century, that romanticized the cowboy. Nowadays, even more recent Western type movies have tried to become more realistic, or at least realistic in the bias of our own era. That women had roles that may more reflect the mentality of our own times than They did back then, but certainly there were women out in these communities. They may have been underrepresented on the trail itself, but in a post Civil War era, you had a lot of men who've been displaced. We know a lot more today about PTSD and the trauma of having participated in and endured things like war. The horrors of seeing battle and coming through on the other side and wondering what your place is. Back then, none of that was even appreciated as something outside of a person's control. You'd gone to war, and for half of the participants, that had been a disaster, a losing venture, and before their eyes, a way of life had collapsed. And I'm not trying to get judgmental here. Certainly there were social injustices in both the North and the South prior to the Civil War. And, for a 21st century person to go back into that time, you'd see a lot of things that we hold up as injustice that would have just been a part of life, even amongst the abolitionists and people of the North. They may not have reflected our current worldview, and that's just a reality of all times when you're looking at other generations, and as the pace of our world speeds up, more so, we starting probably in the 20th century. For those of you who know James Dean and some of the Hollywood movies of Rebel Without a Cause and early films there, preceding the counterculture movement of the 60s. For all of those different social movements, 100 years earlier in the 1860s, thought and worldviews didn't change that quickly. To share ideas at your most high speed would be to place a posted notice in a town and let everybody read it. From there, you had newspapers that maybe a person who was literate would share and read around a fire in a general store, or something in the evening in a small town when it got to you a week or so after it had been written. So lots of differences anytime we talk about stuff like cowboys out on the plains, that we view them through our own understanding of the world, and they would have viewed us with different eyes as well. And hopefully we're all moving in the right direction. I hope we want a world where all people are allowed to live their lives as they want to, without harming others directly. But regardless of what your background is, you have that opportunity to pursue your dreams and work for the things that you want to get. So, little tangent there. Long story to fill in the time here while we're planting carrots and digging dirt is we have a bearing on the things around us in our own environment, and talking to cows keeps those if that keeps those cows content with where they're at, it certainly is a worthy way to pass the time, and they can get some real benefit from it. So painful as that may have been, we now are pretty well done. And I still do want to get that wheat, but as you saw in that painful carrot planting there, this drop is still a little intimidating as far as running off the back end of it. And I'd said I wanted to get this piece finished as well. So I think the furthest out we're going to run here will be, I want to have just enough room to kind of back up off while still reaching out, and I think that's about 3, and then have a fence wall behind it, which would put us 4 blocks beyond the crops themselves, and one of those is already laid. So I think this is as far out as we're going to need to fill, and we'll pretty it up later as we're able. But for functionality's sake and getting our entire field area secured with a stone fence, that's the piece I want to look at right now. And we'll do that. We'll harvest up the wheat that has grown while we've been working here. We'll reset the pumpkins, which should complete that field. We'll gather whatever melons we're fortunate enough to have, if any. And let's see what other trouble we can get into. Now that we've got this, we got loads of dirt back in. I just wanted to use up the dirt that we're eventually going to replace with stone anyway. Here while I've got it, save a trip. So yeah, I think this is coming along quite nicely. And again, thanks for bearing with. This is not particularly exciting per se. Just getting seeds in the ground, but it's exciting for the sake of knowing we'll have steady and reliable stuff when we get to trading. We'll have it ready to go, and we will be set to push. Look at that, we've already got carrots ready. Again, we're not going to do a lot of carrots. We may just find a couple of the pigus out around us and give them a snack, but ultimately we just want to have them on hand. The potatoes are going to be our primary non-steak food, and I think even by the point that we're wrapping up this little effort, we should have enough beef to be pretty well secure there. Every once in a while I like to mix that up, just constantly looking at steak gets a little bit old, but it's a good, dependable food source, and we'll primarily carry it as we go about our business here in this world, as long as that may continue. So pretty good. We'll just flop down our bed here in the midst of the future melon field. I think this is coming along nicely. And again, the local building commission is not going to be thrilled. Big ugly eyesore, but it's functional, and we'll do our best to blend it with the environment as time allows. Okay, now we can switch over do this top layer of stone. And ultimately, I would like to bring some dirt up to a level with this as well to kind of make an edge or boundary around it. That's more of a luxury than a necessity at this point, though. Once we get the walls up, obviously you got to get to a gate to get in or out, and while cutting through our fields may work at some time. If we want to get out to those mountains or something like that, it is nice to just have a framed area around that we can work from. So we'll just, we got torches to run there. But yeah, we're definitely getting there. Man, I don't want to waste time, but I also don't want to carry this dirt back when I have more dirt to dig. So, dirt, meat water. So this, again, would represent a 2 wide area around our fields, and they're kind of utility decks on either end that we can work in. So mainly, we've got a chest that's filling up with dirt anyway. We're always going to have more than we need, and I'd just like to get rid of this that I'm carrying because I want to trim the bank on the way back. On the other side, as we talked about, if we leave a dirt wall even with or up above our stone fence, that can allow critters to just kind of plop on down over it and makes it irrelevant. So why build a fence if it's just going to get walked right over the top of? And then they may be trapped inside, and then we'll have to deal with them. And crops will suffer. It will be generally bad all around. And this, as I had mentioned, is really more of a luxury. We don't technically need this, but it's going to free up the inventory before we go back to let us dig down this hill. And that is something we need to do. So like here, if we've got a 1 high fence, even a monster could get out. If it was just coming off the hill at speed. And we don't want that. Now this is going to get us into our trees, and I think because that one is low, we can at least undercut it and just stand underneath it and aim up. It's not so tall that we won't be able to reach the upper wood. So just keep pressing along here. Yeah, we'll just chop straight up once we're done. Now we could leave this as is. Again, I think this will be enough outside our fence to keep it secure. From there, I think I'll take one more strip back in the opposite direction just to soften that hill for now. And ultimately, that may all become a level plane to work from. But for the moment, we'll just soften it up a little bit to walk out. So we're not looking at a massive dirt cut, like a highway driving through a a ridge that's been carved down to make the road not so steep. Almost there, folks. Beauty. Now, let's go dump what we had. As we said, we got more dirt than we need. Do we need any more over on this side? I think nope. Yep, down at the far end. So we'll just do that while we've got it here. Again, this is far more than we need to be putting into this at the moment, but since we have it in hand, just use up what little we've got. It's a little harsh on the camera motion. I think it's just our standard 2 in a row. Ooh, it's gonna be nice. All the neighbors will be jealous. Oh, wait, we don't have any neighbors. Well, if we had neighbors, maybe that's the pillagers. Maybe that's why they keep taking off so quick. They're like, ooh, man, we didn't expect all that. All right. Now we need a fence, and we need gates, and eventually we'll want chests and things like that, but a little ways off from that. Dirt can finally go away. Thanks for all your time, Dirt. We've already got a good supply. Let's see what. I'll get 60 more. I think that should probably cover us for the time being, because we, the long sides are going to be 64 and change. The length of the field itself will take a full stack, and then we'll have these corners running into the distance. So I think for lighting's sake, we'll maybe start with that. We want our gates. And one of the challenges can be that you don't really know until you're done where your gates are going to be most useful. But generally, having them in the corners where you're going to use them is nice. I'm afraid I'm going to whack my head on one of these trees, but I guess we made it through okay there. So now here, we'll kind of replicate the same. This will give us a nice 2 wide gate here. Now for the time being, we don't really need anything, but I guess we'll just put one there in case that direction becomes where we want to go. And, this is a relatively shallow hole compared to the expanses. It may be that we end up doing some shaping of that just to facilitate access if our donkey becomes a popular means of heading off in this direction. But for now, since all of this is kind of just a drop off, and we don't know that we're going to be headed in that direction, we'll leave those and finish up coming down here. Match up the theme of our gates. Wish that we had more daylight, but I'll push it. All right. Axe to clean up our mess. Few last pieces here. We did not leave that out. Another gate here just to kind of maintain our habit. Torches are 3, not gates. So there we go. We've got a nice perimeter fence that will hopefully keep the nasties out. And if we seem to have gotten probably more lucky than we deserve, it looks like the cows may have vacated before we even got in here. Now, this gets us a little more light than we really need with the gates, but it seems to be pretty decent. And what I'm going to do is put all these up on the fence. It gives us a little more light to the outside. It's a little nicer than just walking over torches, frankly. Then we'll come back and clean those up. And technically, they throw a little more light when they're at ground level, but between the overheads on that side and these, we'll continue to get plenty of light for these to do what growing they will. Here, we'll just maintain that same one inset torch on either side. Nice pattern going, I think. Again, these a little overkill, but rather have too much than too little light when it comes down to it. All right, let's restock those. I should. Alright, enough torches to finish up this replacement, and then we still have that one path to light up in the middle. Pretty low priority at the moment, though. It's got our handful of melons on it, and the other side is just starting with corn. It's this one that's gonna lie until we can track down some beets to throw down in it. And I think in the current world of Minecraft, beets become the most difficult to really get fully done. They give you lots of seeds once you start harvesting them, but I think it just tends to be a slow start for me to get the ones to really get going on it. Oh, fortunate to have the channel right there. Alright, so our melons are going. We're going to do the pumpkins to gather what we have. I'm not going to forget that I'm supposed to be adding these torches for the 17 millionth time. Oh, this is looking good. Again, this is one of the more tedious, slow functions, and I apologize for it, but that does take care of our lighting, I think. So wheat to go, but let's get our pumpkins, and as I mentioned, this will exceed our need for seeding and start to give us a few extra back. And maybe as a special treat, we'll make some pumpkin pie. Think we've got all the ingredients we need fairly close at hand here. So it's something we can definitely look to do. And then having done it, we'll go, okay, now that was fun. Now we've had pumpkin pie. Let's not worry about that again. This is the last little trick. We need just under 32, and I expect we'll need to do at least one more, if not a full 8 total pumpkins to get the ones we need. Oh, look at that. Just one more. It's nice when they come out, although inevitably something's going to come along and get one. Ultimately, we'll need to keep a few pumpkin seeds at hand. And this is, see, there's 7 out of just one melon. Very nice. This is where you can get time trapped, because these pumpkins and melons will keep popping up as you're going, and you just kind of go back and forth a little bit. It does get better when you've got the high-speed efficiency axes. I think as much as I want to just do this right while we're here, I don't think we have enough space. So let's go dump some of this stuff. Let's see about some chests, although I really think until we've harvested our expanse of trees here, it's going to be a minute. So we won't worry about chests for the vicinity of our fields just yet. Maybe a double for each crop type if we really need it, but we can get rid of hoes and excessive shovels. We'll make one more axe. We don't need these. That gets us a little bit of space back for some of this overflowing coal, which we need a stack of to replenish our torch supply. Let's do that. A little bit at a time. Now, we're going to fill up. We're going to completely fill up. Random dirt. Random seeds. I don't have... What is the recipe again? And this is the recipe book. If you click here, you'll go into the recipe screen. And you just start out with what they're called. So pumpkin pie is red because we don't have all the ingredients, but there's not a lot to it. I was thinking it was milk. It's an egg, a piece of sugar, and a pumpkin gets you pumpkin pie, and that is another good food source. It doesn't have the saturation, I think is what people call it, where you remain full for a long time, possibly reflecting the sugary nature of it and the fact that it's more of a dessert item than a real filling meal. But it will quickly fill up a lot of hearts of hunger, or meat pops of hunger, and give you a couple hearts quickly if you need it. And it's just kind of nice to have something different. So maybe this chicken has deposited an egg. We got loads of eggs. What am I talking about? We got stacks and stacks because we haven't started going. Oh, are you guys excited? You're next. You're next. Yeah, we're going to go get some wheat and then come back to visit you. Right after this pie break. I think we'll we'll do a stack of eggs worth of pies. So 15, 16 sugars. Boom. And then pumpkin pie. Now you can see it's framed in white there. We can make it. Boom. We've got a 3-course meal. And we're a little hungry now. Let's go ahead and chomp that down. As you can see, it easily takes care of our food saturation. Now, as mentioned, we've eaten pumpkin pie now. That is kind of crossed off our list. We'll have it here, and can certainly wolf down another one at the time that we're trying to make sure we've eaten everything. But I like to kind of try to keep my food chest sorted by ingredient type stuff, and then the finished products down below. And as soon as we get our steak up, we'll stop toting bread as well. And really, by the time we're done we're done spinning these cows, we're gonna be well set. I'm not gonna carry that. Not going to carry our milk, but I do keep that down on the end too. As you saw from the melon example, it's just easy to overlook something right in front of your face, even if it's as appealing as a slice of melon. So, or at least it is for me. Anyway, now we're kind of more provisioned as we needed to be. We're going to harvest when the sun comes up. That will greatly increase our supply of wheat. You know what? We've got enough logs here that we're just going to do this from the outset. I don't want to have to be in the habit of ferrying finished goods back and forth across, and we'll take what pumpkins and carrots we have, and we'll just set up storage at the ends of our fields so that we don't have to constantly lug it back and forth, and we'll have seeds on hand down there. The only exceptions to those will be that we'll continue to carry some wheat and some seeds for our eventual chickens. And I like to use carrots to take care of pigs, get them going up. Obviously, as habbage, the ham is an important part of the ham cabbage combination. So I don't want to deprive the piggies, but I also want to. I won't need them in numbers. Their cooked pork is just slightly inferior to cooked steak, and so while it will certainly work for us, it's not one I'm going to go out of my way to have just masses of pigs all around. And I'm just putting 2 down. Eventually we'll go 4 per, but we won't need it for a while. And until we've chopped down those trees, we need our wood. We don't need to just turn it all into chests. That was a full stack of logs, so boom. Oh, and let's do this the right way instead of the excited to be harvesting mode. So we can kind of go max speed on our up and down here. Talked about this a little bit as we were first getting going, laying out the seeds, but with the harvest, it really isn't too terrible. And see, we're moving at faster than walking pace to get that knocked down, and we may actually run past some of the wheat that we've knocked, but by immediately returning on the same path and dropping in our seeds, we get most of that that stuff that may have kicked out to the sides, or we may have just run past since we were so blinding fast in our, look at how quick we are. It's pro-style wheat harvesting right there, people. We're taking care of business. Looks good. Now, I'm just going to throw in one because I want to have that ready to go. This is where you just get drowned in seeds. Let's grab just one back so we don't have to start immediately with filling that up with wheat. And here we go. That's our veggie meat empire begun, where soon our name will be known near and wide by, villagers, and they'll be sharing the tales of goodness. So we put down one full stack. That was a fully mature field, and we got all 64 of each. So really happy that we're getting that kind of output without having to, constantly turn in the smaller fields. That's nobody needs that. At least we don't. Now we'll drag these cows over. I hope they're the same ones. There's another. What we didn't want were the stupid sheep. You're not going in the field, sheepy. You're not. I hope you lose interest. There's even a chicken pretending to have interest. I'm not trying to belittle your people, little sheep, but you're definitely the one that I don't want. Desperate times call for desperate measures. And of course, as soon as you go to deal with it, the cows are the ones that scatter to the winds. The sheep is still like, oh, hey, look at that pen. That looks nice. Can I go in there? No, we need to save you, sir. Save you for later. Alright. Back at it. Oh, look at that. We got a trader, though. Now those other two cows. Look, one's all the way over there, and one, I guarantee you, is going to be lost in those trees. Oh, there you are. Come on over. Okay, we'll take you two. We'll let your pond friend out later. Come on. This gets a little more dicey when there's so many in there. So let's... We still want to get that one, but at least he's not right at my door. Let's get these folks fed. I know in the last session I talked about maybe putting the chicken farm right there. Oh, sorry, cow. Coming back to the house, but I rethought that away from stream. And I think I'd really like to maybe go out in that direction, and eventually we can go across. We could fill in the lake if we want to add pigs and sheep as well. For sheep, this type of a configuration doesn't work as well because we're going to want to keep them by their dye, so that if we have a pen of yellow sheep, we may have a few of them for shearing, but keeping them easily separated so that if we need yellow, we've got lots of yellow at our fingertips. Apologize for my noisy friends here, but they're all just so excited to be together, and it gets a little tough for them to pair off in such a crowded environment. So, for the sake of, it's really a quality of life thing, buddy. You and your friends are now going down. And while this isn't completely overcramped, it's from now on. It's really just going to vary on where we happen to be at the next time that we go. I just let it get uncomfortably full and then repeat the process. I always feed right before so that I have a good number of young cows to replace out, and that speeds up the turnaround so that even after you've taken a good percent of your total population, you still only have, one or two more feedings until you're back up to capacity and ready to go again. And like everything else, all too quickly, we won't need to do this as much. We'll have our bookcases and our books made. We'll have 4 stacks of steak. It is going to keep you pretty well fed for a good long while, and we'll have more than that just sitting ready to go. As you can kind of see, while it's not overwhelming, it gave us some experience pretty quickly as well between the feeding and the choppery we just did there. It sets us up now. We talked early on about axes. As you notice, I was using an axe there and jumping. Axes will only do damage to one target at a time. So with the big cows and all the all the babies we just created around here, we wanted to make sure that we weren't just inadvertently then clearing them all out, deleting them with a sword that was hitting multiple targets at a time. And that's the way that I approach that. So I think, as we said, we'll push our chickens in one direction or another. Let's talk to you. You got an acacia sapling. That's not as appealing. One slime ball will hopefully find a slime chunk underground. And yeah, as kind of usual, you don't have a whole lot I'm super interested in. Tomorrow we do the boat trick and get some fresh friends, or some fresh leads. I don't think we're going to do anything with those llamas specifically, but definitely going to take the opportunity to cook up our steaks. It won't quite put us at a full reserve stack, but pretty darn close. And that's all right by me. The other thing that we want to do is get a couple chests set up down by the cows so that we can have one to keep feed in and another to... Dude! Are you a new cow? Where did you come from? Come on. Over with the others. I think it's the donkey. I think everybody loves the donkey. He's like Donkey and Shrek. Just who doesn't love him? Everybody wants to hang out. But again, we're glad to have you, Mr. Cow. Mrs. Cow. I call him Mr. Cow. It's a long story. Obviously, gender roles are not tightly maintained in the Minecraft universe. Between creation of offspring and production of milk, there's lots of ways that things don't exactly add up in a reality sense, but we're I'm not gonna call them out to you. It's too much fun. So I don't think I'm wrong to say Mr. Cow on occasion. They, at worst, have attributes of both. So enough there. What I said was we want to get our feed boxes down, and just when we thought we were done with the shovel work, here we go doing some more. Oh, that was a miss. So I'm just going to pop out a little bit of extra space here. If the cows that we keep seeing eventually dry up, then we won't have to be worrying about leading cows in this direction. And we'll be set. So, as I said, getting a couple chests here allow us a chance to store feed on site, so that if we're just running by and we want to throw something in or take a turn feeding up our cows, we can. It also gives us that quick, easy access in. When it's really full, as we saw when we were bringing the cows in, you open a gate and almost just by pressure, they're going to start spilling out of it. So just having this little lip to launch in saves the time of the gate and only makes that one interaction we have to deal with. So we'll fill in that hole so we don't twist an ankle and get set. I'm not real excited about doing chickens. We've done so much of that work that I think we've earned a break. The other thing that we've done is reached the end of this little stretch. I'm going to wrap it up and break this as a episode so it doesn't get too terribly long, and this will likely be a skipper for many. Not a ton of excitement in the literal sense. We never did put our pumpkins and carrots away. That's okay. We'll deal with it. We can put our 2 boats back and our new found leads. That's great. Villager, if you could just reach out to your friends and tell them that we're really looking for a couple of items you haven't had in stock, that would be spectacular. I want to pull as much of these as we've cooked. Look at that. Full stack of steak. We're living large. We've got plenty of food to go around. We're going to make that one more axe just while we're here in this session, so we're all ready to go when we come back to it, just in case, something distracts us from anything else. So we'll have a bed ready to go. We'll have a full stack of food. The only thing we're still really lacking from our kit is a bow. But what I am also going to add is a few pieces of fence and a few leads that we can carry with us on our donkey friend. And we'll put in this extra stack of torches, just so that we have a few extra. And I think, just as kind of a starting point, we'll throw a stack of coal, a stack of logs, and the rest. So let's go load him up. There we go. So now he can carry, when we stop for nights, or if we go diving into a cave or see a village or something and get off, he's going to be prone to wandering. So being able to throw down a fence and tie him up to it at least keeps him from wandering quite so far. And then we've got just a few very basic supplies there ready to go, so that if we find we're busy working now with that, the coal we've got more than enough of, but we need more iron, and ultimately, like coal, we'll be stacking that into blocks to just manage our storage a little bit more. But right now, we've basically traded in everything that we have. So yeah, that's going to be our necessity. We're going to see what our land has to offer first. Go on a voyage or a wander where we go out beyond our fields towards those mountains. We've got a river that kind of separates us from I'm pointing through a wall. Separates us here from our nice taiga, and as you can see, that kind of raises up. But while we walked across the grass this way, we had approached kind of from that direction, generally way off in the distance, and we come across these plains. We didn't really go far away from the coast here until we found ourselves and decided this was a good spot. And I think it's living up to any possible hope that we had for delivering on that. Still on our to-do list, a little bit longer term after our adventure, I want to ultimately get a second level on our temporary home. Shear the sheep that we do have around here. In fact, while the getting's good before he wanders off, let's get a bit more wool, because I don't like having just a single bed that I always have to wander. I want to take one for the trip and have one that I know will be back at home. So, snip, get you. Snip, get you. Get an egg, snip. That'll help. It looks like a nice cool day, or warm day, I'm sorry. Keep you cool on a nice warm day. Our trees did really well. Again, they were going before we were even done planting them all, but got a good variety of trees. We can dedicate some time to going through there. That'll give us stacks of wood, which will be nice. And maybe, depending on our luck on our little journey, we may get some more. So we're good to wrap up here. I'm going to step away for a little bit, start a little bit, but it's certainly not done creating some content for the day. It's a little bit inclement outside, so not one I want to spend a whole lot of time out in the world on, and we'll instead trade it for Minecraft Virtual World. But you guys take care. Enjoy the next video when it does come up, and thanks as always for watching. I really do appreciate it, and hope to see you back here for the next, and appreciate your comments in. So thanks for watching. Bye now.